Maya Sinclair loaded the last box into the back of her old car, just as the sky turned pale gray. The morning was cold and quiet. She stood for a moment with her hand on the car door and looked back at the apartment building one last time. It had never really felt like home. It had felt like a cage. For 2 long years, Maya had lived under the shadow of Damon. He was an alpha, strong and proud, and at first she had believed his strength meant safety. But she learned quickly that his kind of strength was different. He wanted to control everything she did, where she went, who she spoke to, what she wore. Slowly, without even noticing at first, she had shrunk smaller and smaller until she hardly recognized herself. She was a wolf too, or she was supposed to be, but she had buried that part of herself so deep that she could barely feel it anymore. Her wolf had gone silent, like a candle blown out in a dark room. Damon had wanted it that way. A quiet wolf was an obedient wolf. Not anymore, she told herself. Not ever again. Maya drove for hours, watching the city fade behind her and the green hills rise ahead. By afternoon she reached a small town called Hollow Creek. It was the kind of place people passed through without stopping. Quiet streets, old trees, a single sleepy main road with a bakery and a hardware store. Best of all, no pack claimed this land. She had checked and checked again. No alpha ruled here. No one would know her. No one would know Damon. She could finally breathe. Her new home was a small cottage at the edge of town. The paint was faded, and the garden was wild and overgrown. But the moment Maya stepped inside, something in her chest loosened. The rooms were small, but full of soft light. A kind old woman named Mrs. Harper owned the place and lived nearby. She greeted Maya with a warm smile and a plate of fresh cookies. "You look tired, dear," Mrs. Harper said gently. "But this place has a way of healing people. You'll see." That night, for the first time in years, Maya slept without fear. No footsteps in the hall, no angry voice, no lock turning, just the sound of wind in the trees and the distant call of an owl. She slept deeply, and when she woke, sunlight filled the room. She made herself a cup of tea and stepped outside into the wild garden. Weeds grew tall, and flowers pushed up between them, stubborn and bright. She smiled and knelt down, pulling at the grass, imagining what the garden could become with a little care. Maybe, she thought, she could grow here too. Then she felt it. A prickle along the back of her neck, the feeling of being watched. Maya froze, her fingers still in the soil. Slowly, she lifted her eyes. At the far edge of the overgrown yard, where the tall grass met the shadow of the trees, stood a figure. He was tall, taller than any man she had ever seen. He stood perfectly still, and his eyes were a deep golden color that seemed to glow softly in the morning light. He did not move toward her. He did not speak. He simply watched, calm and steady, as if he had been waiting there for a very long time. Something strange happened inside Maya. Her wolf, silent for so many years, suddenly stirred. It was like a spark catching in dry wood. Her heart began to race, but not from fear. It was something else, something she did not understand. "Who are you?" she asked, standing up quickly and brushing the dirt from her hands. "This is private property." The man tilted his head slightly. "I'm sorry," he said. His voice was low and calm, gentle in a way that surprised her. "I didn't mean to frighten you. I live nearby. I'm your neighbor. My name is Kael." Maya studied him carefully. There was nothing threatening in the way he stood. In fact, he kept a careful distance, as if he did not want to make her uncomfortable. Yet everything about him felt powerful in a way she could not explain. The birds in the trees had gone silent. The air itself seemed heavier, charged, alive. "I'm Maya," she said cautiously. "I just moved in." "I know," Kael said. Then, seeing her expression change, he added quickly, "News travels fast in a small town. Mrs. Harper mentioned it." Maya nodded slowly, though something in her still felt uncertain. "Well, it was nice to meet you, Kael, but I have a lot of unpacking to do." "Of course," he said. He gave a small, respectful nod and turned to leave. But before he stepped into the trees, he paused and looked back at her. "If you ever need anything, I'm just through the woods. You're safe here, Maya." Then he was gone. Maya stood alone in the garden, her heart still beating fast. "You're safe here." The words echoed in her mind. How could he know she had been afraid? How could he know that safety was the very thing she had come all this way to find? Over the next several days, Maya settled into her new life. She fixed up the cottage, planted seeds in the garden, and slowly began to feel like herself again. And often, she saw Cale. He never came too close. He never demanded anything, but he was always there in small, quiet ways. One morning she found a stack of firewood neatly placed by her door, enough to last the whole cold season. Another day, when her old car would not start, he appeared as if he simply knew, and fixed it without being asked. He never expected thanks, he never asked for anything in return. It confused her. She was used to a different kind of man, a man who gave nothing and demanded everything. Cale was the opposite, and she did not know what to do with it. But strange things kept happening around him. When they walked together through the town, other people seemed to lower their heads slightly, as if out of deep respect. Once, a large stray dog that frightened everyone in the neighborhood lay down calmly at Cale's feet the moment he passed. And Maya's wolf, silent for so long, grew louder every day he was near. Finally, one evening, she could not hold her questions in any longer. They sat on her porch steps as the sun dropped low behind the hills, painting the sky in gold and rose. "Cale," she said quietly, "who are you? Really?" He was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to her, and his golden eyes met hers. "I think you already know," he said softly. "Your wolf knows." Maya's breath caught. "You're not just a neighbor." "No," he admitted. "I'm not." He told her the truth then, gently and without pride. He was Cale, the Alpha King, the ruler of all the packs, the highest authority among their kind, the one that even the strongest alphas feared. He had power beyond anything Maya had ever imagined. Maya felt cold fear rise in her chest. She stood up quickly, backing away. "No," she whispered. "No, I came here to get away from powerful men. I spent 2 years being controlled by an alpha. I won't do it again. I won't." Cale did not move. He did not try to stop her. He simply looked at her with quiet sadness. "I know what you ran from," he said. "I would never do those things to you, Maya. I did not come here to control you. I came because the bond between us pulled me across the entire country to find you. You are my mate. My equal, my queen, if you choose to be, but that choice will always be yours, never mine." Maya stared at him, her heart torn in two. Part of her wanted to run. She had heard sweet words before. Damon had spoken sweet words too, in the beginning, before the words turned to chains. "How do I know you're any different?" she asked, her voice shaking. "You don't," Cale said honestly. "Not yet. So I won't ask you to trust me with words. I'll wait. For as long as it takes. And if you never choose me, I will still make sure you are safe. That is a promise." He rose, gave her that small respectful nod, and walked back into the trees, leaving her alone with her whirling thoughts. In the days that followed, Cale kept his word. He did not push. He did not demand. He gave her space, and in that space, something began to grow. Maya found herself laughing again. She found herself standing taller, and her wolf, once buried and silent, began to run free in her dreams. But peace never lasts forever. One gray afternoon, Maya returned from the market to find a familiar car parked outside her cottage. Her whole body went cold. She knew that car. She knew who it belonged to. Damon. He stepped out slowly, a cruel smile on his face. "Hello, Maya," he said. "Did you really think you could hide from me? You belong to me. You always have." Fear rose in her chest like a wave. For a moment, she was the small, frightened woman she had been for 2 years. Her hands began to shake. "I don't belong to anyone, Damon," she managed to say. "Leave, please, just leave." But Damon only laughed and stepped closer. "You're coming home with me. This little game is over." Maya's back hit the cottage wall. There was nowhere left to run. And then a voice rang out across the yard, calm but powerful, so full of authority that the very air seemed to tremble. "That is far enough." Cale stepped out from the trees. He did not run. He did not shout. He simply walked forward, and with every step, Damon's confident smile began to fade. Damon was an alpha, strong and proud, but he could feel the truth now. The power standing before him was greater than anything he had ever known. Who are you?" Damon stammered, taking a step back. "I am the Alpha King," Kale said quietly, "and you are trespassing on my land, threatening a woman under my protection." Damon's face went pale. He had spent his whole life believing he was powerful. Now he stood before the one being every alpha feared, and all his pride crumbled to dust. But this was Maya's moment, not Kale's. Something inside her shifted. Watching Damon shrink back in fear, she felt her own fear turn into something stronger. All those years of being small, of being silent, of being afraid, rose up inside her and transformed. Her wolf, free at last, filled her with strength. Maya stepped forward, away from the wall. She stood tall, her eyes steady, her voice clear and firm. "No, Damon," she said, "I am not the woman you controlled. I found my voice again. I found my strength. And I will never, ever be afraid of you again. This is my home, my life, and you are going to leave it right now." Damon looked between them, at the Alpha King standing calm and unmovable, and at Maya standing brave and unbroken. He realized in that moment that he had already lost. He had lost the day she found the courage to leave. "Under my law," Kale said, "you are banished. You will never come near her again. If you do, you will answer to me." Without another word, Damon turned, climbed into his car, and drove away, disappearing down the road for the last time. The dust settled behind him, and then he was simply gone. Maya let out a long, shaking breath. The fear that had lived inside her for years slowly melted away, replaced by something light and warm. She turned to Kale, who had not moved from where he stood. He had not fought her battle for her. He had stood beside her, as an equal, and let her find her own strength. "You didn't stop him yourself," she said softly. "You let me stand up to him." Kale smiled, a gentle, genuine smile. "It was never my battle to win," he said. "It was yours. I only wanted to stand beside you while you won it." Tears filled Maya's eyes, but for the first time in years, they were tears of relief and joy. She understood now the difference between the two men. Damon had used his strength to make her weak. Kale used his to help her become strong. That was everything. "I was so afraid of trusting again," she whispered. "I was afraid that all power was the same, that it always turned to control." "Strength should protect," Kale said quietly, "never possess. You were never meant to be caged, Maya. You were meant to run free." Maya looked at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached out and took his hand, not because she was afraid, not because she had no choice, but because, for the first time, the choice was truly her own. "I choose this," she said. "I choose you, on my own terms." Kale's golden eyes softened, and he squeezed her hand gently. "On your own terms," he agreed. "Always." The seasons changed in Hollow Creek. The wild garden that had once been overgrown and full of weeds became something beautiful. Maya planted flowers along the path and vegetables in neat rows. She and Kale worked side by side, turning the tangled yard into a place of life and color. Mrs. Harper had been right. This place had a way of healing people. The overgrown yard, once the place where fear had found her, became the place where her new life truly began. In the evenings, Maya would stand at the edge of the garden and let her wolf rise, running free through the trees under the silver moon, no longer buried, no longer silent. And Kale would run beside her, not ahead of her, not behind her, but always beside her, as an equal. She was no longer the frightened woman who had loaded a car in the grey morning light and driven away from a cage. She was whole now, woman and wolf, strong and free, finally at peace. The cottage light glowed warm and golden in the quiet night, and Maya, standing unafraid in the very yard where her real story had begun, knew at last that she was exactly where she was meant to be.